The first question we're going to look at is why should a company use a PR agency to do their PR and marketing, and can they not actually do it for themselves? And if so, how do you think they can do that? Penny, as you're responsible for Trunki's PR and marketing efforts, what do you think on that? Should you go to an agency?
I think when you're starting out, I think a lot of small businesses think, I can do my own PR, I can do my own marketing, it can't be that hard. But actually doing it yourself and not knowing what you're doing, you could actually do your brand a lot more damage than good. I think people look at PR agencies and think it's a really expensive thing, but actually if you're using them on a short-term basis, it's actually a lot more cost-effective. I mean, when we set up Trunki, our main focus was PR. It was just Rob running the business by himself in a small boutique PR agency, and we had the greatest start, so we're definitely for it.
Laura, I'm guessing you are probably going to be for it.
Oh, yes. Well, I don't want to do myself out of a job. I think having the kind of pre-made contacts is a huge asset that we have at 10 Yetis. And when you're starting a small business, it takes a lot of time to go out and talk to journalists and build those relationships, and being able to go to an agency that has them already made, that can then go to the journalists and talk about your business on your behalf and understand the best way to do that to get results is money well spent, really.
What about you, Helen? Obviously, you're running your own business, and you're quite a small. Well, you're growing quickly, but you're quite small. What's your thoughts on paying money to an agency to do PR?
Yeah, I think you need to be, as a small business, obviously cash flow is king, and you need to be really important with how you spend your money. And I think kind of using a project-based or a short-term basis, Penny said, is probably quite a good idea. Like at Rocktails, we currently don't use a PR agency. We've looked into it, we've had some meetings, but a lot of the time we find that the people want to talk to us anyway. It depends on, I guess, your business, but if you're very much the kind of the driver of your business, usually journalists will want to talk to you rather than anyone else. And I think that in some cases, business owners are best placed to sell their own business. And I think it is something that we'll probably look to use a PR agency for a project. But I think like a long-term kind of running on kind of retainer, I'm not sure is really the best way to go, because I'm not sure that you would get the best value out of it.
How do you do it then? How do you get the word out? As you've got to run the business, make money, but at the same time promote it. What do you do?
Yeah, it's just a massive balancing act. Like it's a constant battle, I guess. Like we were in Company magazine just at Christmas, the Christmas edition, which was perfect, and we did that just by our own kind of contacts. It does take a lot of time. It certainly does take a lot of following up. It's a bit like sales, really. You just need to keep following them up every week. I guess the joy of our company is that it's a pretty nice product, which most, especially female journalists, are quite happy to take some free samples of. So we do quite a lot of like just sending out boxes of cocktails, really, which most people aren't opposed to. But it does take a lot of time, and it's something actually that we're just in the middle of recruiting a marketing and kind of PR graduate intern, just because we don't have the time to physically do it ourselves. So we're going to look at doing that and getting somebody in to do the kind of groundwork and help us out really with it, because it's so difficult, but it's so important. Like as Trunki said, it's PR strategy is very, very key.
Dave, what are your thoughts? You obviously talk to businesses. Do you think they should be using an agency?
A world without PR. I'll just drop this in the river out there, shall I? It's quite an intriguing idea, isn't it? I mean, I suppose if you go back to basics, journalists used to have this lovely romantic notion that we met people in pubs and they told us something, some great scoop, and then we kind of ran and printed it or put it on the telly. And I suppose to some extent, PRs, people who hang out in the proverbial pub, aren't they? So, when the journalist goes to I'm obviously using the phrase entirely in a kind of metaphorical way, pub, they know the guy at the bar or the girl at the bar, and they say, I've got a new story for you or a new company for you, and that's what Penny's talking about there with the whole idea of contacts. From the journalist end, though, there's nothing like talking to the actual person, as you were saying, Helen. So long as, I'm being temperamentalistic here, so long as Penny was saying, the actual person does a good job from the point of view of the company. Mm-hmm. And I think, I've noticed in my career that not just about companies and PR, but in general, broadcasting, there are people who can talk and there are people who can't. There are people who like telling their story and people who can't. And it's not about journalism, that's about life, isn't it? There's the bore at the party and there's the person who's great fun. And some of that can't be taught. And because some of it can't be taught, I think people who've got it, there's no need to wrap them in a kind of mystique of professionalism and trade skills and, practices and 10 great ways to sell your company. We all know what they're like, and a lot of times entrepreneurs are those people. There's a big overlap. Not always, because sometimes they're slightly geeky in their particular area. They're a brilliant designer or a brilliant farmer or a brilliant, whatever. But they're not actually that good at imagining what the outside world thinks of them. So I guess that from our point of view, and this isn't looking at it from a cash flow sort of accountancy end, the perfect scenario is you have a contact with, a company. Of course, that company director, the actual person, the entrepreneur, is quite busy. I mean, just to use Trunki as an example, because we've done quite a lot of stuff with you guys. And, when you talk to Rob, it's nice because you're a journalist. You're talking to, Rob Law, who set up Trunki, and that's what you want to do on the phone. But on the other hand, he's quite busy and you can't always get hold of him. So it's nice to talk to Penny or Claire or whoever and actually do the kind of organisational stuff. I certainly would say that there's a mystique at the moment, slightly, that's going around that, if you set up a business, you can't do your own PR because it'll be a disaster. And it's like trying to do your own law or your own accountancy. And I think to some extent, it isn't a profession in quite the same way. That's probably a slightly controversial view for those of you who are in the PR trade. But I think there is something to be said for people selling themselves direct to journalists as well.
Well, Andy, it's perfect time then, as head of a PR agency, to come in and respond to that.
I'm leaving. I think Dave's right. This isn't rocket science. What we do, I think, the approach that we take, obviously, is that we suggest to people that you do try and do your own PR first. I'm not from a deliberate PR background. I kind of fell into it through being very good at lying. So I think if you're a charismatic person, as a lot of entrepreneurs are, then journalists need to hear from you direct, and I think that would work well. I think where an agency can add value is where you have one relationship and you'll get one hit in a magazine or a newspaper. Well, actually, we can turn that around and try and get sort of 10 to 20 hits from the same story on the same day. So I'd suggest that our relationships, you're kind of buying into our relationships and our contacts and our ability to get you a mass hit of coverage on the quick.
What do you think, Sharon? You're head of content PR for a brand that we all know, but you do it from inside. So what are your thoughts?
I mean, our approach is we do both. I mean, I'm a big fan of making sure that staff internally are trained up so that you don't have to rely on agencies, but at the same time, agencies add a lot of value. For our company, obviously, we're well known. Probably not as large as you might think for the brand. We're only about 150. But I guess what we find is that, if I was to go looking at a small business, it's all about time and I guess the size of the business. So, and then what's your priorities really? If you're starting off, I would probably, if it were me, I would just give it a go myself and do as much as I thought I could. And I guess PR is a little bit, I think, about common sense. It's just you doing what you feel is right for your business, but getting some help in for projects is probably a good first step. And then you can assess it from there, assess the value, because any agency you work with, they'll give you a daily report of all the coverage you've got, and then it's up to you then, whether you think that's worth it. I mean, we use agencies, and we need them because we haven't got enough time to do everything ourselves. But I do think you need to do it yourself as well. It's both. So you're still in control, and you're still developing relationships.
And Sarah, obviously, you work for the NHS. How does it work in the public sector?
I think we seem to be talking about media relations rather than public relations. So I think there are those public relations, and what I do and what my team does, media relations is a small part of that. So I think it's about what you want to do. Of course, journalists want to always speak to the person who's responsible for the product or service. And I always say to my board colleagues, it's a disaster when I'm the person talking about the hospital. It should always be the people who are delivering the service. I don't want to hear from me. I want to hear from the doctor, the nurse, the person who's, you know, building the new hospital. That's who I want to talk to. I don't want to talk to myself. I don't want to hear from a spokesperson particularly. But I think public relations is much broader, and certainly what I do is a lot of, you know, strategic work around how do we get people to come to hospital for the right things and not the wrong things. That's not media relations. That's a much broader scope. And, you know, what my team are responsible for is everything from the internet to the staff magazine to crisis and issues management to, you know, all sorts of things. So I think it's horses for courses. I think the great thing about this region is that there are a great expanse of marketeers and PR practitioners who work in large agencies, small agencies, sole practitioners, freelancers. So I think in terms of advice giving and knowledge, we're in a great position here in the west of England.
So basically we've concluded that you should use a PR agency for certain projects, maybe not on a retainer, and it is very, very possible to do it yourself.